Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for what no doubt will be an interesting session. I have my esteemed colleagues here, Omar, Khateeb, Henry Peck, Scott Pantel. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. And today I will play the role of the guy that doesn't know a lot about the subject we're about to cover, and I don't have to act, okay? But all joking aside, one of the things we like to do at the summit is we like to introduce new technologies, obviously. We like to introduce new leadership, and these two gentlemen here represent both of that. They're on the cutting edge of technology. They support medical device companies that are innovating, but they also are innovating in their own individual ways. And so we started talking about this concept, a couple months ago. It all came together, and what we have prepared for you today, I think, is an exciting and educational session where I believe that we're going to lay out kind of the framework for what we're talking about here. Then we'll get into some questions, and at some point, hopefully, we can open it up to Q&A. So again, welcome. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Omar.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to be here. And before we get into it, we want to kind of do a quick high-level introduction as to what all this means. I think it will provide better context for the audience so you can ask questions. Henry and I joked because we were trying to bet who's going to end up standing first because we both prefer standing. But since I'm talking first, I'm gonna beat him to it. But for one thing, I want to sort of acknowledge and say thank you to Scott because I think he puts on such a fantastic event. My background is that aside from being a newly expecting father and with a wonderful wife who's here as well, I spent the last 10 years in surgical robotics, AI, predictive health, formerly in med school and decided to drop out. And I was in SaaS for a year, and I missed med device so much that I came back, and more specifically this conference. So I just wanted to acknowledge Scott for putting something on like this because it's what makes this industry great. So if we can just kind of give a round of applause for that. So this involves a lot of interesting buzzwords. So I think to understand where we are today and where we're going, we need to just kind of quickly understand what does all this mean? Web 1, Web 2, nobody knows what these things are. If we look at all the companies today on planet Earth, 70% of them that are billion-dollar unicorns, so on and so forth, they all utilize network effects to get where they are. And 70% of the market cap and value that you see in the market today came from network effects. What does that mean? If we look at where the internet came, right, if we think about these different phases of Web 1 and Web 2, think about it at the 80s. And by the way, if you guys want to close your eyes to imagine this, I highly recommend it. Just listen to my voice. It's very good. In the 80s, we had PCs, personal computers. You had a desktop, you had some programs on the desktop, and then you had a database, right? Get to the 90s when I was a kid, right? Internet, right? Windows 95 comes along, AOL Online, remember the little yellow envelope that comes out, right? So we had the web, right? We had browsers, we had websites, we had the internet, right? And servers, physical servers that were in the room, right? We get to do the 2000s, right? And that's where things start getting really interesting. So these companies I mentioned, say Uber, Airbnb, the things that talk about network effects, where, again, the value of the network keeps doubling and growing in value, but in terms of the computing power, we went from a huge room that had an entire computer, and the network was limited to that room to what we have in our phones, right? This fits in our pocket, but the network on this is global, right? Things are getting smaller, getting cheaper, getting faster, but getting more powerful. And so what Web 2.0 was mobile phones, social media apps, and the cloud, right? The playbook for Web 2.0 was network effects. You have a smartphone with a good connection, and that enabled user engagement, content creation, and media digestion at scale. 2005, there was 1 billion internet users worldwide, 2005. 2019, that was 4 billion. Of those 4 billion, 3.9 were mobile phone users, and 2.5 were smartphone users. Now, anybody want to throw a guess what that number is today, just 3 years later? How many mobile phone users do you think there are in the world? Smartphone users. 2019, it was 2.5. Anybody want to throw a guess?
2.6.
2.6. Thank you. No. It's up to, so I can't find how many internet users there are, but through all the data sets I looked at, there's 6.7 billion smartphone users, okay? So things are getting faster and faster, which brings us to Web 3. Web 3 is about VR, AR, so virtual reality, augmented reality, and the Internet of Things. It's about blockchain, which Henry's going to talk about in a moment, right? And artificial intelligence. The last thing I'll mention about this before I let Henry take it from there is that what I just described to you about where we came from, where we are today, these are old protocols. This was a world designed so that two computers can share information in a static way. Web 1 was like static images, static pages. Web 2 is about social media and connection, right? What Web 3.0 is about what human beings have historically tried to do forever, which is control things. This is about the first time that we have protocols where human beings, artificial intelligence, and machines can manage and coordinate activities in both the physical world and the digital world at the same time. And please keep in mind that I didn't use the word real world. There's no such thing as a real world anymore. These two things are becoming the same thing, and they're blending because we're all technically a walking version of a singularity. We have these phones that are enabling us, right? And the last thing I'll mention is that when I talk about AR and VR, we think about these things as toys, right? But it's much more than that, and that's why we think about the Internet of Things and blockchains and NFTs, because 50% of our brain is visual, right? There's a reason why even some of the investors in here who are like 60 years old, 70 years old are using emojis to communicate. It's faster, we're visual animals, right? 70% of the receptors we have, they are in our eyes. It takes us 1/10 of a second to look at something visual and get all the information about it. So Web3 is about extending our imaginations and our ideas into these different modalities to control these activities between us, AI, and computers. And with that, I want to hand over to Henry to talk about what blockchain is, what cryptocurrency, and what NFTs are. Yeah. And after that, we'll get into a lot of fun Q&A.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Thanks, Omar. I think it's a really nice introduction to the type of technologies we've seen through the internet. Real quick, I'm at a company called Altoida. I'm director of marketing. It's a neurological disease diagnostics company that uses an AR platform to extract data from smartphones. So very familiar with a lot of these protocols. I'm also a digital native and early crypto adopter, NFT collector, early GameStop investor, for any of you guys who are part of that.
That is true. He was an early GameStop investor.
All things kind of fun and emerging in the internet, and I've taken a lot of that energy and knowledge into healthcare now, partnering with folks like Omar and innovative leaders in the space like Scott to try and help educate the leaders like all of you in our industry so that Medtech can lead in this new technology rather than falling behind. So when we think about Web3 from a practical perspective, Omar touched on a lot of the tools and technologies that are there. I just want to baseline with some quick terminology. And if you get one thing from this panel, hopefully you can now go home and talk to your kids, nephews, grandkids, whatever it may be, in the terms that they're using. So the blockchain is kind of the global infrastructure that we're talking about. Everything is built on chain, as we would say, which enables transparency, access, and a ledger such that when something happens, anyone who has access to that chain, whether it's a transaction, whether it's a communication, can see because it's been validated by the different blocks that surround it. So as opposed to traditional internet, where if you open your phone and do something on Facebook, maybe you buy something, only they have that data. If I'm in a blockchain environment and I purchase something using something on that chain, and I'll get to currencies in a moment, then that transaction is traceable, it's public, and it's been confirmed by all the other eyes that are watching that system. And so probably the most popular application of blockchain technology has been in cryptocurrency, creating tokens, things that live on the blockchain, think like cars that drive on those roads. And those currencies are traded like assets. They fluctuate in value. They can be used to transact. And those are things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, newer blockchains with coins like Solana, Cardano, right? AVAX, Avalanche as they call it. So there are many, many different chains. And one thing that's important to remember is that the cars that drive on one road don't exactly drive on the other road. So if I build something into the Ethereum blockchain and I want to purchase something that lives in the Solana blockchain, those are different roads. So there are ways to move between, but understand, Ethereum is the name for the entire chain, and the token, the Ethereum coin, is what drives on those roads. And so when we think about that coin, an asset like a currency is fungible by nature. Meaning if I have one Ethereum, and Scott has an Ethereum, and Omar has an Ethereum coin, they're all worth the same. But non-fungibility means that each one of those tokens would be unique and therefore have their own unique intrinsic value that's special to that token. And that's where you have the term NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And we've heard about these. We see pictures of monkeys selling for millions of dollars and little, crypto punks, as they call them, the emoji-looking guys. But what's happening there is that each of those tokens, just like the Ethereum coin is a token, those images are linked to a token, that's the visual representation of that token, that lives and transacts on those roads and holds its own value. And when I've talked to people and they've asked, kind of why do these things have value? Why are people paying millions of dollars for these pictures? I always kind of equate it. I've been living in the Bay Area for the past few years, and if any of you guys have been in San Francisco, you know it's phenomenally expensive to own real estate there. I imagine it like if an alien came down and looked at that house, they were like, why is that house worth millions of dollars? It's tiny and small, and who would want to live there? But what you don't see is the value of the land, the real estate, the technology infrastructure, the schools, the history, right? All of that stuff. And I think that's with NFTs, what you see in the news is picture of monkey sells for millions of dollars. You don't see what that key is giving you access to, what gate it's actually unlocking, the community behind it, the resources those people have access to, the network, and all the things that that key gives you. So again, an NFT, just like a coin or a currency, they are both assets or tokens that move on a blockchain. And then a DAO is the last one I want to cover, a decentralized autonomous organization. Think of that like your company. Rather than being built where you have a board that makes decisions in a closed room, and then individual employees or people that work, they receive salary that's determined back there, and they don't know how decisions are made. A decentralized autonomous organization is a company, essentially, that is built using smart contracts on the blockchain. So voting, governance, decision-making, communication, it's all built into the blockchain rather than in traditional environments. And so these companies have become outstanding vehicles for a lot of the things we're going to touch on in financing, in building community, in investment opportunities, and in healthcare applications.
That's great. So, by the way, they've explained this to me about 5 times, and it's starting to really hit me right now.
Scott, something I do want to share, because Henry's absolutely right, and a lot of my education actually came through Henry on this, and we've known each other for many years now, and so I was excited to for us to collaborate on Medtech's first NFT project. So when it comes to fungibility, right, it's something that can be transacted in the physical world. Like here's a dollar, right? So this dollar is the same as the dollar that's in your pocket right now, right? Do you think this is fungible? Yes, right? Until I tell you that this dollar is not fungible, because at home, I have an official certificate and a letter from Warren Buffett saying that this is the first dollar he made when he was 9 years old and invested in his first company. This has now become a non-fungible asset in the real world. So again, on face value, a picture of a monkey with his eyes bulging is not worth $2 million until you realize what's actually authenticated behind it. So
that's great. Okay, so we have a group of Medtech and healthcare innovators here. So, and I applaud you all for being here, right? How can this all start to even relate to healthcare? How does healthcare tie into this? It's interesting. We're learning, but why should we care with respect to our industry? What are some things we should be thinking about?
Sure. Let me set this up, and Henry, I want you to drive this home more. So, to Henry's point earlier, we do these things because we need to, as an industry, get better about getting ahead and thinking about how these technologies impact what we do. So, a perfect example of, let's say, an NFT and blockchain is that, look, I'm a patient like everybody else in this room. You know what's a royal pain for me? Is when I leave, let's say, Kaiser, and I go, let's say, with a different insurance company, my wife and I moved from Silicon Valley to SoCal, and I have to regurgitate all my patient information over again. I'm 35 years old, I remember it, but what if you're 50 years old? What if you're 60? What if you're stressed out? You forget. And that happens. There was something, one of my family members has Hashimoto's thyroiditis, right? I forgot that. What if I had that on an NFT that I'm able to transfer? It follows me from hospital to hospital. And let's say that NFT expires, right? So next year, there might be some new things in my patient data, right? So I'm gonna have a new NFT or a new token for that. What do I do with the one from 2022? Well, what if as a patient I say, well, you know what? I don't need this, so I'm gonna loan this out and get paid by these medtech or biotech companies who want access to my data, and I'll give them this NFT and they can use it for however they want. But I want Henry to kind of take it further.
No, it's a good tee up. I mean, patient data ownership is obviously one of the bigger problems in healthcare, and a lot of people will roll their eyes. The interoperability is not there yet. How could you possibly bring technology like this to a system that still runs on Epic? I think part of the thing to understand here is that in this Web3 world, we are right now kind of moving the needle with a lot of these things. It's not all meant to kind of land slam dunk, make it into the industry tomorrow and change everything, but it's kind of continuing to advance things. And so in patient data ownership, as Omar said, I'll give an example in genomics. Any of you guys ever use 23andMe to sequence your genome, right? Congrats, you got rugged. And what that means is you got kind of hosed by 23andMe. You gave them money to take your genomic data, give you some interesting insights, of course, but then turn around and sell it to Roche and make a ton of money. So in a world where we can apply Web3 to kind of cut out that middleman, individuals can organize themselves in a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, that would send you a genomic sequencing kit. Your genome would be linked to the NFT that you've purchased and hold, and therefore the token of that DAO has inherent value. And by sequencing your genome, you've now created a genetic database that DAO can use to transact with pharma companies, and individuals that hold that NFT or the governance token of that DAO can receive compensation for it. So basically, removing a middleman in data aggregation and data storage and data sale, as Omar said. There's a ton of other applications too beyond just patient data, which is a really messy landscape. Let's even take kind of the research aspect, where you have patients trying to participate in clinical trials and looking to engage, regardless of the wearable device they have. If you have to use Apple's kit to do this or Fitbit to do that, if you can create a decentralized framework by which clinical trials can be selected agnostic of that device, you then open up the landscape for more to participate. You can use these technologies to realign incentives in industries like pharma, where drug development is historically owned holistically by the pharma company. You could have patients be kind of the drivers of drugs, of Medtech, of therapeutics, of interventions, all these things. So when I think about Web3 and where this technology can apply in decentralized science, in healthcare, in Medtech, it's about the fundamentals are changing ownership, changing the ability to fundraise and finance things, and changing the way that we think about compensation and engagement to work. And there's a whole bunch of other applications in investing, fundraising vehicles to purchase things. And there's some fun examples of DAOs that have bridged into the physical world and the real world, or the physical world and the digital world. There's a DAO called Constitution DAO. This will be my last thing to pass it to you. And do you guys remember when the Constitution was up for sale? So a DAO formed where individual people bought the token of that DAO to fill a treasury to try and buy the Constitution. And they got really close.
They got very close.
And there are now DAOs popping up all over for these types of things. DAOs that want to buy golf courses, DAOs that want to buy NFL football teams. There's a DAO right now trying to buy the Denver Broncos. So this idea has also been applied in medtech and healthcare. There's a DAO called VitaDAO, which is fundraising and investing in longevity biotech. A DAO called PsyDAO, that's fundraising and investing in psychedelics. So it's only a matter of time before individuals in medtech start getting smart and saying, well, beyond the traditional venture model, which I know is a big thing, a big theme of a lot of what we're seeing now, beyond the traditional venture model, there are opportunities for individuals with passion and influence with regulators, whether they're patients and they have advocacy, and there's a lot of value they can bring beyond capital to pool and use decentralized frameworks to invest.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something I was going to mention, to Henry's point, when we hear things like this, it's like, oh, I don't think that's. Does anybody know the world's largest hedge fund? Anybody know what it is? It's Wall Street Bets on Reddit. That's the world's largest hedge fund, right? Because that's what happens when you start pooling mass amounts of people who are going to throw in $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. That's literally the world's largest hedge fund at this point.
So you talked about timing, we're getting close. Healthcare, notoriously, we're a very, very slow-moving industry. So, make some bold guesses here. How close, as an industry, are we to actually embracing and implementing and really doing something with these ideas?
Yeah,
and compare that to other industries if you can.
Oh no, absolutely. I think a good example is the project that we launched, which is the Mad Device Club. So. For me, I'm focused on sales and marketing. There's a very famous meme maker called the Mad Device Rep on Instagram, who has a huge following of 9,000 extremely loyal, dedicated sales reps, right? So Henry and I decided, if we want to do a community-based NFT, we should do it in collaboration with the Mad Device Rep. So that's how it started. Then, as you guys saw probably this week, we released a press release. We were very excited about it, but we partnered with Scott and LSI. So LSI is an official partner with that, right? So now you have somebody who's an innovator in product, somebody who's focused on sales and marketing, the most prolific meme maker industry, pulling together a community of very passionate, driven sales reps who are looking to change things. Here's something interesting that I didn't predict this happening this soon. We have yet to launch and mint. We're going to be doing that maybe in a week or two. As of last night, 27% of the people who are on that waiting list are physicians. So what happens when you have a decentralized autonomous organization or even a channel where the people who are holding NFT are sales reps, but also physicians and the world's best, life science market research company, right? What are the kind of possibilities? What ends up happening? And I think those are the things that we have to start considering. Henry, I kind of want you to take it further and also
to predict. I hope you don't hold me to these. I think one thing in terms of firstly, kind of look at other industries. So you're already seeing some really natural applications of this in fashion, for example. It's become a big area where fashion and kind of ownership of assets. You're seeing the value of things that we see in the real world, right? This suit in the real world versus the things that you put on your avatar in the digital world equate in value, or at least have some of that value. And that's bleeding a little bit into this metaverse concept, which of course comes with its own bag of worms. But that is fashion's an opportunity, gaming is an opportunity as well, where you can basically reward for time and have assets that are generated through those games. In medtech, where I really think the innovation will first start in financing, whether that is financing innovation from universities, getting things beyond tech transfer, using NFTs as forms of movable IP to increase efficiency and scale there, and kind of flip some of the processes that we're used to with patients being an afterthought to patients being the driver. I think that is coming now. It's happening. VitaDAO has made investments already. So there is IP in biotech and medtech that is currently owned by a DAO. So it's happening. I think in terms of what comes to market with patient ownership of their own data, probably 3 to 5 years, I'd say, is when you'll start to see individuals be able to have a healthcare wallet where I have multiple tokens and assets that are serving as a movable ledger of my own data. And then also where I get really excited too is I think just the way it's going to change work in medtech. In the Web3 model, employment becomes very different. If you think about a DAO as your company, your early investors can be rewarded with NFTs that fluctuate in value. Your workers can be compensated with the token of that DAO, and contributors to a DAO, tasks can be assigned more easily. You can have more fluid employment dynamics. So I think it'll help scale expertise in our industry in a very short time frame, where if you have companies that are leaning into these technologies, you can have core contributors from a variety of different pockets, scale access to the type of experts that you have in this room. People can be more easily compensated, and then work becomes more fun.
Mm-hmm. Something to consider also, Henry's correct about the funding mechanism. So we look at the music industry. One of the things that we always hear is how artists get screwed over by these labels. Well, a lot of artists are saying, well, I'm not going to release my album through a label. I'll do it through an NFT project. And I think Tory Lanez, mm-hmm. he was the fastest to platinum because he sold 1 million of his NFTs to his music within an hour, right? So let's translate that to the venture world and medtech world. On one side, and again, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to come back to MedDevice. I love this conference, and this conference does a great job of really projecting ahead in the future. We didn't talk about this until just a month ago. Mr. Wield, who's giving the keynote on equity crowdfunding, that's a new funding mechanism, right? Another one is, let's say, a decentralized autonomous organization who buys an NFT, and rather than let's say, a third or fourth time founder in medtech, instead of raising money from venture capital, they say, well, I'm going to raise it from this group of medtech sales and marketing people, because aside from them just giving me their money, this is a network. These are people that I can lean on to go to market. The other side is that I want to be kind also to the venture firms. There are some great ones in this industry, but as an example, every venture firm, every VC has to do a song and dance and jump through hoops to raise money from LPs or limited partners. Here's an interesting example, and maybe I'm projecting here for a wish. Sonder Capital is a firm that I respect a lot, mainly because they have actual operators there. So like Jay Watkins, legend in our industry, Fred Mall, legend in our industry, there's other people. So if Sonder Capital said, we can raise money from our LPs, but we also want to start an NFT and raise money from the medtech community, I would buy into that NFT. Mm-hmm. all day.
Yeah.
And so what happens when you give people different modalities and channels to get money to do these different things? Because again, think about the world that I just described, from PCs to 1, 2, and Web3. We're ending up with more and more channels, right, to do things. And that's why, I'll give you a prediction, the economy is going to probably go up 10, 20x because, think about the world that I just talked about. Henry and I keep mentioning this. There's the physical world and the digital world. There's a physical world that I live in, but then there's multiple digital worlds that I personally live in. There's the Twitter digital world, there's the Facebook digital world, there's the LinkedIn digital world. All those things, they take a certain amount of time, energy, money from me, right? So those are the things I think that are going to happen.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the challenges, I suppose, that we face too. Like one, obviously we know healthcare moves slow. One unique challenge, I think, for our industry is that as compared to other industries, like in the high-tech space in general, that are becoming more distributed by nature, right? A lot of that talent has been distributed. I think that is one big challenge that this space faces, where like a lot of medtech talent is still really concentrated in some major hubs. And so decentralization does open the opportunity to bring in talent from all over. But you're still kind of, it's going to take time, I think, before some of that talent is dispersing and leaning in on that. Whereas, your Minneapolis hub, right, where you have all of that talent, all of those companies concentrated, there's a proven model for IP to market that's very kind of entrenched in some of those spaces. So I think decentralization presents a really new way to think about it, but one that might be met with some resistance long run.
I love the tie-in to what David Wild is going to be talking about tomorrow, Father of the Jobs Act, and he'll be here tomorrow talking about various items, but one of them is this idea of raising money from the crowd. And if you thought about raising money from the crowd a couple of years ago, you might be scoffed at or told that you absolutely don't want to do that. And now people are definitely waking up to the opportunity. We talk about the community, letting people get in on things. Your investors can become your ambassadors and ultimately become your patients,
Exactly.
and it's all about community. And so I love the tie-ins there. I think it's going to be really fascinating if we took some questions, but I don't want to get too far down the road unless you'd like to do that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's see some questions, but just so people have something to kind of look at. When we talk about the equity crowdfunding, here's one that I could not have predicted. And no offense to this company, by the way, I like what they're doing. So there's an orthopedic company called Monogram. They do 3D printing orthopedic implants. So it's not something like wildly new. This company raised $23 million through equity crowdfunding. I saw their YouTube videos. I saw them on Instagram, which is like, hey, be an investor early on in this company. $500, $1,000, $2,000, right? They raised $23 million.
Yeah, and I'll point out to you, you see a lot of folks from new entrants into our industry here, and frankly, I'm getting involved in helping support this ecosystem. Where we have 5 companies here that are doing Reg A plus, that are embarking on or close to doing Reg A plus a capital raise, and Monogram's a great example of a company that's had a lot of success. And so when you look at the scale of, you look at that chart, and a couple of years ago it's, I don't know about it, then I need to start thinking about it, and then here we are. It feels like we're getting to the here we are moment really, really quickly. And so I think it's a really, really interesting tie into what you guys are talking about.
And I think, is it Paula Violet?
Yes.
So Paula Violet was mentioning about the importance of being agile and then starting to invest earlier and earlier. And I think the reason for that is that VCs can get in at an early stage company. Obviously, there's a lot more risk, but you have a lot more upside because if you wait till later on when the companies are proven out, there are going to be other vehicles to fund, and then the founder's not going to have a reason to come to you if the VC's only providing just funds and nothing else. Yeah, maybe jump into some questions.
Let's go to some Q&A, but there's one here I like. How can VCs and investors use NFTs? Have we already talked about that?
A little bit. I think, again, it's...
We already talked about it? Okay.
If somebody wants to know more, we can talk about it. It's all good.
Somebody's got to have a question. Yes, please. Burke.
Thank you. This is a very interesting conversation. For a startup company, we live on the bleeding edge of technology. I really appreciate it. One thing I struggle with fundraising mechanisms from the layperson, if you will, as a life science company. I struggle how we educate that individual who's going to invest in the company as a layperson.
Yeah.
Understand the risk they're taking. If I were On the other hand, venture capital has an outsized control of capital right now, and they take out all the big returns early, and then again, the layperson doesn't get to participate. So I'm struggling with how to navigate that, and I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. It's still a really, I could start on this one.
You start on.
It's a, I don't want to glaze over that it is high risk, right? I mean, for everyone you see making a ton of money in crypto, there's 10 more people losing a ton of money, right? So it is still super unregulated. There are very few controls. It is hard for anyone to learn and manage, and historically, it's required a working knowledge of like the tools and technologies that you can even use to transact with that environment. Like, if the ability to set up a wallet, to generate currency, to then move it, and like just all that knowledge has been hard to obtain. Now, a lot of innovation is happening. There's a whole swath of companies that are kind of building your foundational internet tools for Web3. The things that are going to help individuals kind of who have less of a kind of crypto native bent come into this space, and we're already seeing that again. For with the NFT project we're doing, we've built out a cross mint ability so that you are able to mint the NFT just using a credit card, right? So you don't have to go create a wallet, get Solana, then do all this stuff. Like we've removed that technical barrier. On the fundraising side, I think something to also kind of just to maybe frame a little bit, these DAOs, most of them in practice kind of function like benevolent oligarchies. So, for example, the best way I can think about it is like the scientific investment ones that I've spoke about. VitaDAO is an example that invests in longevity biotech. It is not just you buy the token and then IP comes, everyone raises their hand, yes, no, and a majority wins. There are committees of experts and kind of a governance framework such that there are elected officials who hold expertise, whether that be in base science, in research, in fundraising, in safety, regulatory. That way they're making sure they cover all their bases. And individuals with token can assign votes to those kind of validated entities. So some of those controls are being built in. And this is something I just kind of to bring it, like one thing I love about the space is really smart people like yourself are asking these questions, and it's forcing new models, right? Those first DAOs, it was just pandemonium. It was like buy and do this and then just see what happens. But now as we bring this technology into new spaces and into highly regulated environments like healthcare, people are thinking through these things more actively and critically and putting vehicles in place to prevent the individual investor, even if you buy a token and you make an investment and you don't really know what you're doing, first of all, the power of the community kind of self-corrects for a lot of that, but there are controls built in such that things are vetted and looked at properly.
And it's a good point about thinking about the layperson. But here's the thing: we said the same thing. So in a former life, I was in med school. I was smart enough to drop out, though. Sorry for the doctors in the audience. But the same thing was said about like patients getting educated about their own health, right? There's issues with that. But the layperson they're ending up with more disposable income. And now think about it like this: a lot of people aren't traveling for work. So they have extra money to spend. The pandemic was a great boom for the economy because people spend more time at home and they're spending more money. The layperson is looking to get rich, and it's not a zero-sum game. There's ways for people to invest, and so just like the layperson might say, "Man, I keep hearing about this GameStop company. Let me throw some money into this." Right? They know the risks that they're taking. What this is going to force, to Henry's point, and that was the purpose of this panel, is that very much like philosophy, it's not about just how you think. It's about how we're going to act. Right? What different actions are we going to take? It's going to force us as medtech companies to say, we need to get better, which I've been harping on this for 8 or 9 years. We need to get better about marketing. How do we tell a story better? How do we educate the public? How do we educate investors? Right? Because by doing that, right, it opens up all these new avenues. And I think that, again, so a salesperson is a layperson, right? But they also have money. And they know how to look at things and pull together just like anybody else. Social media works because we use tribes. Amazon works because we use the Amazon tribe to say, this thing got 50,000 reviews and it's 5 stars, it's probably pretty good, right? So we use our own tribes to say, yeah, I think we're going to invest in this. And rather than one person spending all this time researching and making a decision on something, right, we start distributing the work and saying, okay, I read these articles, someone's read these articles, blah, blah, blah. Between me and, let's say, 5 other friends who are lay people, we say, yeah, this is a good investment. Each of us are going to throw $2,000 in it. right?
I think we also have to break down, just last thing, we have to break down the get-rich-quick narrative with crypto. That's been
Yes.
a big, that's like
Thank
one
you.
of
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
biggest problems in the space is like individuals, again, all you see is what's in the news, and so you think it's like all or nothing, I'm gonna make it big or it's all gonna go to zero, and the reality of the space is it's not really like that. Some of these really early projects are like that, and if you do your own research and you want to be in that space, again, there's a high level of technical fluency. But again, for the most part, the things that we're trying to sell here and the idea of bringing this into healthcare is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's meant to be, building and growing collaboratively and collectively. So that, I think, just what you mentioned about telling the story.
Last thing I just want to point out, because I remember, sir, your name again? Bert. I remember you because you asked, in my opinion, one of the best questions last year, which you asked, and I think we should ask it again.
The digital surgery panel?
I think so,
Yeah.
which is it going to be someone within our industry or from outside the industry that's going to come in and actually get us away from the old razor blade model? No, the world does not like change. It's very, very painful. Until not changing is more painful than changing, right? And so with these new things, we have no idea how they're going to influence things. So I think that's the other way that this can catalyze those kind of changes, including in the business model.
Yep. And that's great. And just to follow on to that, because I think it's a really important question as well, Burke. If I'm sitting here and I'm considering going the traditional VC route or maybe going this new route, and now I'm thinking about those potentially unaccredited investors, and that's precisely one of the things that David Wield is he's gonna add to what's been shared here today and talking about why we include, not exclude, and there's a lot of philosophical elements to that, but I think, please, if you can make it tomorrow, you'll get some more detail on that.
Something, and we'll go to this question, this gentleman next, just something to think about. Let's say you're raising money. What would you prefer? Or, I'll give you two scenarios. Would you prefer to raise $4 million from a VC, or would you prefer to raise, let's just say, $2 or $3 million, and your investors are, let's say, 500 people who work and sell within the space and the specialties that you're trying to get to? And so now you have a sales force, a marketing force that does not work for you, of people who believe in what you're doing, that are going to proliferate that message. I would go with the latter every day. The gentleman back here. Yes?
I'm with Crowd Therapeutics. We are developing a drug delivery platform. I like your comments from the sales, marketing, and VC standpoint. I would really like to hear your opinion in terms of applying digital twin, digital thread, supply chain tracing, authentication of the device.
I'm going to mention, yes, so the question is about applying these digital technologies to like supply chain authentication. I'm going to mention one thing, and then I want Henry to take this because he knows this a lot better than I do. On the authentication side, one of the big problems in the pharmaceutical world is authenticating what drugs are real, because there's a lot of counterfeit. These modalities, these technologies make it a lot easier because, again, I mentioned in Web 2.0 we had cloud, Web 3.0 we have the blockchain, which means everything's living on a public ledger. You cannot manipulate that, right? So I think authentication in the pharma world is going to make it a lot easier, which means that we're going to have more efficacious drugs, which means that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, especially in the parts of the world where they need these the most. Me living in the United States, if I don't get like antibiotics, I may not die in a week. But if you live in the third world and you don't get the right antibiotic that's been authenticated, let's say it's like a cheap knockoff, you might die in a day, right? And then your family's going to die as a result of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of a grim example.
No, it's super happy, super fun. So glad we're keeping it light. No, it's
That's LSI,
I think he did a kind of a good job summarizing it, and I think you could open a whole nother kind of panel discussion just around blockchain applications for the things you're talking about. To me, this is where when we talk about predictions, it's kind of like a stalemate between data that doesn't want to change. So it's hard to be the only one using blockchain to do something like that because it's very infrastructure based. I think when you talk about digital twin, I'd like maybe a little more follow up there because digital twin, I think in say like clinical trials, for example, is a super exciting avenue.
Digital twin for the...
Yeah, you can basically, rather than doing like match studies and you can create control groups you kind of simulate responses to something and create control groups using a digital clone, if you will, of an individual from their data. So I think when we have access and ownership to these data, is being able to own and monetize a digital twin that's batched for a purpose like that could be super exciting. I think the logistics side, though, with blockchain is much more limited, less by the technology, and more by the infrastructure it's playing in. The other thing I'll call out to you is, again, when we think about chains and things that are on chain, you're only as good as the roads sometimes. So have you guys heard of gas fees, that term? I think I didn't play that earlier, but it's, again, when you transact in the crypto world, there is a monetary fee associated with buying cryptocurrency or purchasing an asset. And Ethereum, which is a very, very popular chain for developers, is remarkably high gas fees. We're talking hundreds of dollars it can be to purchase an NFT just in fees that you pay. We're building on Solana, which is a much lower gas fee environment, and same thing with Avalanche and Cardano.
How much lower, just so they know?
1/20th, 1/30th it can be, depending on the type of asset you're moving. But the reason I bring that up is that I think you will see an uptick in uses for the kinds of things you're talking about once the scalability of the chains become more efficient and the energy consumption is more efficient. The time, the blocks that it requires, the time it takes to make those transactions are more efficient. So there has been like an ecosystem limitation and also just a blockchain limitation.
Questions?
Who's got the next one?
Based on that, and I know this is more of a techie question, but all you're betting on basically is you're going to a proof of stake kind of mechanism of consensus to try to make this way better in terms of efficiency for the transactions in the blockchain, for you to enable this and make it more commercially available in terms of price.
Yeah, I think there is I'll jump in on that one. Yeah, I think it's a good point, right? And it's kind of how fast and efficient is enough to start, to say like that is where we are and that's what we're building. And there have been people who have kind of had questions around like, okay, well everything that's built on Ethereum now, when we are no longer using that really as a utility chain, does it become worthless per se? The way I kind of think of it is like your Bitcoin and Ethereum are like your gold and silver. They're really more reserve tokens, and the blue chip NFT projects that were built on chain for Ethereum will likely hold value for a long time. That's my prediction. I think you're seeing a lot of developers who are smart contract developers, build in Solarity, et cetera. They are moving to these newer chains because it's easier to kickstart, it's easier to test ideas, it's easier to find people. So the kind of growth that you're talking about there, I think it's super relevant. There's going to continue to be new chains, new currencies, new projects, new environments to build in. But I don't think I think it becomes less about there will be an inflection point where it becomes less about the incremental differences in efficiency and speed and more about the types of individuals that are native to that world. So for example, if many artists are putting their visual art on chain in one environment, that may see a lot of uptick in a certain community, whereas in healthcare, we may be more focused on a chain that's optimized around patient data ownership, and that's what you're seeing being built there. So I think it might become more community forked. Think about like, even in we can use it in Medtech and healthcare. It's an example. Like you profile the behavior of different physicians a lot, right? Obviously, a lot of KOLs are on platforms like LinkedIn, but where interventional radiologists may convene and have conversations might not be the same social media platform as the Medtech business development guys and your people. So I think you'll likely see that with blockchain as well, where different communities will find different environments that make the most sense for them and start convening and building there.
And is it Dr. Luis Almodovar? So just to kind of use that as an example.
Good eyes.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. So I don't work for their company. We literally just met last night, but I want to use them as an example. So they have a very interesting technology, which is for suturing. They have roller-based suturing, which I've never heard of in my life, but it's really the first time there's been any innovation in suturing in the last 100 years. Again, my background is I went to medical school. My father's a general surgeon. I study surgeon and surgery history very closely, right? So as they're looking, and their company is called Ergo Suture. As they look for funding, and I could be completely wrong about this, but because it's not SaaS related, so on and so forth, maybe some VCs and investors, they don't get as excited about it, right? So 5-10 years ago, Ergo Suture would have a difficult time maybe raising money. I don't think they will, because what they have, I was really impressed with it and I loved it. But let's say they say, okay, we have some venture firms who are going to come fund us, but every surgeon we show this to, they lose their mind because they love suturing, and this speaks to a huge pain. Why don't we just do a DAO and issue an NFT where these 1,000 surgeons who have attended some of our webinars and everything, they can buy that NFT, They have special access to a community of surgeons who are going to focus on this new way of suturing called roller-based suturing, right? And they raise money that way,
And
right?
this could be, this
or they
might
go
be,
the equity crowdfunding
Right, I
route.
was going to say, this could be, and again, this is a example that was not discussed, so do not take any of this that way, but I think one of the nuggets in what Omar said there is, imagine a community of surgeons using decentralized protocols to fundraise and invest. The same way that a venture capital firm, they're excellent capital allocators and they add value in their network and those types of things. Now this surgeon DAO that's investing, they can add value as key opinion leaders. If patients pool their money and invest, they can add value in regulatory discussions, clinical trials, right? The kind of recruitment and building patient registries. So I think that's one of the exciting things too with decentralized investing perhaps, is that you build communities that have intrinsic value beyond just the money they're providing.
Bert?
There's other questions. I'll stay quiet.
Come join us up here, Burke.
I don't think I know enough to be up there. It's embarrassing. I was thinking about a potential, and it's probably going to be controversial, but patient data control that you mentioned before. And thinking about intra-procedural data that's collected by a provider. I don't mean a healthcare provider, but a manufacturer, I should say.
Right.
They design an imaging system and they collect this patient data. Now they lock it up today. In most
Right.
cases, that's what happens. And patients don't really know, right? If I went and told a patient, hey, your whatever data, if it was available to the startup community, will actually make your treatment better over time, but it isn't. What are you going to do about it? There's nothing they can do. Do you feel like the NFT concept could proliferate into all patient data? So if you're a manufacturer, you collect this data, but it comes with an ownership to that patient. You're capitalizing it, that's great. But that patient is either going to get something,
Yeah.
they're going to be able to tell you, I actually want you to share that.
Yep. And there's a lot of models you can employ for that, where there can be kind of you can create a company that functions as a central DAO that for that application provides the imaging. You need to if you provide the vehicle by which the data is collected, like when I mentioned that the Genomes DAO that provides genomic testing. If you provide that and then the DAO owns that data, the DAO is able to transact with a company that maybe wants that data in a startup environment or the manufacturer of some hardware, data sharing, and then again, I don't want to get too much into what they call like the tokenomics of how the token would increase or decrease in value, but if you have a governance token for that organization and that organization's able to use cryptocurrencies as the modality for having those kinds of transactions, you can increase the value of the currency for all those that hold it. So not just the NFT for storage, but me as an individual with my genomic data sequenced, I can hold this gene and gnome token for this organization. And as those sales are made, if I'm on the platform, I can choose, yeah, Roche can see it, J&J can't. Sure, use it for clinical trials, but not for this. I have that ability, that customization, because it's valuable in high, in that high volume. But the monetary compensation to me can come in a variety of ways, whether that's an increase in the value of the token that I'm currently holding, direct kind of dividends back to me. There's tons of models you can use to set it up, and these are still being, flushed out and thought through by really, really innovative people in the space. But what you make a great point, which is that it can proliferate to so many use cases. Wherever there is data being generated, patients can have a cut of that in Web3. It gives you the ability to control access, to monetize access. I think, I don't speak for everyone, but at least for myself and a lot that, those I've spoken to, I don't really mind these organizations having my data. I know they want to innovate with it. I know they want to use it to get better. I just want to be compensated for it. Or I want to be invested in what's being generated from it. And I think that's kind of the missing layer there that Web3 enables, is giving me the ability to, selectively monetize it or not monetize it, to allow myself to be invested in what's developed on top of it.
Or perhaps demand sharing.
Agreed.
So your care gets better
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and faster.
Small examples is that these things stay the way they are and stay locked up until the demand is there. So small example, LinkedIn is a social platform like everything else. LinkedIn has dashboards where I can see data, right? Well, it wasn't, they were locked up, and they were, compared to other social platforms, very strict about plugins, what third-party apps can get into it. But because people demanded it, because either they changed or they left the platform, now there are other platforms like, for example, Shield app that provides 10 times better data analytics on LinkedIn for me because it plugs into LinkedIn. And LinkedIn had to compromise and do that because either they allow that so that I can have my data and do what I want with it and get better clarity on it, or I leave. And now on the monetization side, like, it was just kind of coincidental, but like even a few weeks ago, there was a marketing company, because based on the audience that I have and the amount of content I put out, wanted to just pay me a one-time fee just to get access to my Shield app to get the analytics of impressions, clicks, earned media, those kind of things.
So if we want to get involved, I applaud you guys again for having the courage. We talked about courage this morning to get up here and talk about these things that are out there, and I applaud the folks that are here that are taking it all in. I think we all have an advantage. The people in this room for sure, me sitting here and getting educated on some things that I think in a year, when we fast forward to a year, we're going to be having a different conversation about the things that we're talking about right now. If we want to get involved, people want to get involved, they want to stay connected with you guys with respect to what you're doing, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think, the number one place where, one, you can see Henry, myself, and also the Mad Device rep, and Scott and LSI, we need to add them as well, is if you go to maddeviceclub.com, that's the website where we talk about it's the first Medtech NFT based project. You can sign up. It's not going to guarantee that you're going to be able to mint an NFT, but at least you'll get the information, you'll get the education and see the progression of that community.
And he means that because there's a limited number.
Thank you for telling. Yeah, there's a limited number. There's a limited number. So maddeviceclub.com, just go and enter your email, and you'll start getting the information and updates from us, which will include when we're gonna mint, but also functionality, updates from the community. And you get to see in real time. So you guys heard what we're doing now with it. In 6 to 9 months, we'll see what kind of functionality and utility that NFT has.
Yeah, and I think maybe more broadly to kind of bring it back, it's nobody was like born knowing this, and I think there's this misconception that everyone in the crypto space is this young person sitting in their basement on their parents' computer, and people have no idea what's going on. In being involved in a lot of the projects I'm involved in the Web3 space, it's a really healthy mix of people that are innovative and forward-thinking across all generations, across all disciplines, and a lot of functions. There's opportunity for whether you are an engineer, whether you are on business and partnerships, sales, marketing, community, design. There's so much that is happening in this space. I really encourage everyone to kind of try and do a little bit of research and go down some of these rabbit holes where there's awesome content where you can learn and form opinions. And I think, again, just the last thing I would say is I think we're moving finally from the time when it's thinking like, how can I get rich off of buying NFTs, to how can NFTs and Web3 more broadly enhance my business and augment what I'm doing today. And that's where I hope we get to in healthcare, is like using these technologies as accelerants rather than things that we are afraid of and shunning and kind of don't touch with a 10-foot pole.
And I would say, to Henry's point, something that I criticize our industry about is that we emulate our customers, like every industry, very closely. So our customers are very skeptical and dogmatic about things, physicians, and so are we. The one things that we don't do, though, and Henry knows where I'm going with this because I ranted to him about this so often, is that we don't embrace this concept of continuing education. Right? And this is the purpose of this panel, which is when you have new education, it gives you a new way to think. And philosophy is not about thinking, it's about what actions are you going to take. So take advantage of what you can call the second Gutenberg revolution. You have access to podcasts, audiobooks when you're sitting in your car, waiting in line. Start getting exposure to this information. Start thinking about it. Go through mental exercises of saying, well, if we had to raise money through an NFT or do this and that, what would that look like? Ask better questions and you'll get better answers. And then I think as a result of that, you'll start taking different and more important and effective actions as a result of that.
And talk to us. Tell us why we're wrong. Tell us why we're right.
Hit us up.
We're happy to have conversations.
Fight with us on Twitter. We're both on Twitter. Just call us out. Don't be afraid.
All right. Well, this has been terrific. I think we should give these guys some recognition for getting up here and teaching us. I know.
everybody.
They're going to be around for the balance of the event. Thank you guys for being here. We talked a year ago about doing some things like this. Here we are doing it, right? And we'll come back in a year.
No other place that we could have done a talk like this than
Agreed.
LSI, and we appreciate it. We appreciate what you do for the medical community and the investment community. And
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.